Yellowstone National Park, a place as awe-inspiring and beautiful as it is unquestionably dangerous. Notorious for harbouring one of the biggest supervolcanoes in the world, it poses a threat of cataclysmic proportions. Yet the peril of an impending apocalypse is not the only danger that lurks within the rugged landscape. This vast expanse has claimed numerous victims in the most excruciating and tragic of circumstances.
Officials in Yellowstone National Park say they found part of a foot in a shoe in one of the hot springs.
Welcome to Grim Tales, and in this episode we will be looking at a truly horrific death, and the person who this happened to willingly chose to go to their death. Let's dive in. Yellowstone National Park, established in 1872, is one of the oldest national parks in the world, located primarily in the US state of Wyoming, with smaller sections in Montana and Idaho. The park spans approximately 3,472 square miles. Yellowstone is renowned for its diverse ecosystems, geothermal features, and vast array of wildlife, drawing millions of visitors each year. However, whilst exploring its breathtaking vistas, Yellowstone's petrified forest and hot springs serve as a cautionary reminder of what lies below. The park sits atop the Yellowstone caldera, a supervolcano that last erupted about 640,000 years ago. The caldera powers various geothermal features in the park, including the iconic Old Faithful and the vividly coloured hot springs and mud pots of the Upper Giza Basin. While attractive to people from far and wide, the park's geothermal features can pose risks to visitors who don't tread wisely. Thin crusts may conceal boiling water or acidic pools, leading to lethal burns or falls.
A woman who entered Yellowstone illegally this morning was badly burned after falling into a thermal feature. Park officials say the woman was backing up to take a photo near Old Faithful and fell.
But these features aren't the only risks.
The terrifying moment a bison charges a group of tourists.
There was another close encounter between a bull elk and a tourist at Mammoth Hot Springs in Yellowstone National Park on Sunday.
Get over the fence!
The park's rich biodiversity, which supports a wide array of wildlife, including black bears, wolves and bison, can also pose a threat if you do not take appropriate care. Yet, even the most careful travellers may find themselves challenged by the vast wilderness and unpredictable weather. It's clear to see why visitors are advised to respect the inherent dangers of Yellowstone. Unfortunately, sometimes warnings go unheard. In the summer of 1981, 24-year-old David Allen Kerwin and his friend Ronald Ratliff set out in their truck from their hometown of La Canada Flintridge, California. In the back of the truck was Moosey, Ronald's female mixed-breed boxer. The pair had planned an epic road trip to kick off the summer, which would take them through Las Vegas and the deserts of Nevada, before stopping at the legendary Yellowstone National Park. We don't know where they would have gone from there, as their summer adventure was tragically cut short. The men and Moosey spent the morning of the 20th of July passing through the small town of West Yellowstone, before taking in the scenic surroundings of the various springs and geysers. At around 1 p.m, they pulled up for a closer look at one of the most famous hot springs in the world. July in Yellowstone is said to be the best time of the year to visit, with most trails accessible and plenty of wildlife out in force. It's at the tail end of the storm season and just before temperatures reach their soaring peak in August. On this day, temperatures reached a high of about 21 degrees. Perhaps a perfect day to walk the Fountain Paint Pot Trail or drive over to the Old Faithful Geyser. But first, they would visit the famous Celestine Pool. The Celestine Pool, sometimes referred to as the Celestine Spring, is one of many geothermal features found within Yellowstone National Park, and is renowned due to its stunning colours and extreme temperatures. Its official name is the Grand Prismatic Spring, but it's often referred to as the Celestial Pool due to its bright blue waters, reminiscent of an astronomical sky. The Grand Prismatic Spring, located in the Midway Geyser Basin, is one of the largest hot springs in the world and is estimated to be around 5,000 to 10,000 years old. Its name derives from its vibrant colours, which resemble those of a prism, ranging from deep blue in the centre to vivid shades of green, yellow, orange and red along its periphery. The Celestine Spring is a must-see in Yellowstone, and David and Ronald were eager to see its mesmerising colours and otherworldly beauty in person. The water in the spring can reach scorching temperatures of up to 93 degrees Celsius near its centre, gradually cooling towards the edges. These extreme temperatures are achieved by the thermal activity associated with the Yellowstone caldera, the volcanic hotspot that powers the park's hot springs, mud pots, and geysers. Needless to say, it is not to be confused with the gentle thermal springs elsewhere in the park, such as the not so aptly named Boiling River. Although there are lots of signage, features, and boardwalks around the park to protect visitors, there were probably less in the 1980s, with guests asked to use caution and common sense in their enjoyment of the park. The visible heat and steam bubbles rising from the centre of the spring would have been enough to put most people off getting too close. However, as soon as the men pulled up, Moosey bounded out of the truck to explore her new surroundings and headed straight for the boiling hot pool. Presumably more used to the reservoirs and lakes of La Canada Flintridge and seeking comfort from the back of the hot truck, Moosey jumped straight into the Celestial Spring. Immediately, the dog started making pained and distressed yelps, which attracted the attention of everyone nearby. David and Ronald ran towards the spring to try and rescue her, and it was there that David would make the split-second decision that would change his life. At 1 p.m. and in the height of the summer, the park was filled with tourists, hikers, and wildlife enthusiasts who watched in horror as David approached the edge of the steaming hot celestial pool. Moosey was still floating near the edge of the pool, but making harsh and frantic movements and increasingly upsetting noises. David looked like he was headed straight into the pool after his friend's dog. All reason had seemingly left him, only to be replaced by a panic-stricken need to help the distressed dog. Onlookers approached David to advise him against getting so close to the spring. One warned him specifically not to go in there. Reportedly, his response was, "Like hell I won't," and with that, he took 2 steps into the spring before diving in head first. Physiologically, the human body cannot withstand the searing temperatures of a boiling hot spring. As David submerged himself into the boiling pool, his skin was immediately subjected to temperatures exceeding any human threshold of endurance. The intense heat penetrated his flesh rapidly and would have caused immediate damage on a cellular level. David would have been in immediate and intolerable pain as he dived towards the dog. Somehow, he managed to reach Moosey, but as the excruciatingly hot water sluiced through his skin, his own survival mechanism kicked in, and he threw himself back towards the edge of the spring. First-degree burns only affect the outer layer of the skin, with the burn site displaying as dry and red, with no blistering, similar to mild sunburn. Second-degree burns are more serious, damaging past the outer layer towards the dermis layer and presents as blisters, swollen and painful. Third-degree burns, however, destroy both the outer and inner layer and may affect muscles, tendons and bones. The skin will appear white or charred, depending on the cause of the burn. When third-degree burns affect only a small portion of the skin, they can be treated with skin grafts. But when these penetrating and deadly burns cover the entire body, they are nearly always fatal. David would have experienced third-degree burns from head to toe almost instantly after submerging his entire body into the hot spring. In those moments, David would have experienced agonizing pain, an overwhelming sense of panic, and a pressing will to survive. The realization of what he had done, coupled with the searing pain coursing through his body, likely induced a state of shock. However, he was still conscious and fighting for survival as he threw himself out of the pool, where his friend Ronald wrenched him out, sustaining second-degree burns in the process. As David resurfaced, the shock gave way to visceral agony as the adrenaline wore off, and he realized what he had done. The onlookers that had previously tried to warn David ran to offer their assistance. It's reported that his whole body was white, his hair falling out in clumps. He had been physically blinded, with a park ranger later reporting that his eyes were bright white, as if they had been boiled. Ronald laid his friend down while strangers gathered round to help. One knelt down to take David's shoes off, to find that the skin on his feet fell off with it. David was heard saying, and quote, "That was stupid. How bad am I? That was a stupid thing I did." Emergency services were called immediately and arrived as soon as possible to the site of the accident. David was taken to the nearest hospital, accompanied by Ronald, his beloved dog, now sadly dead and being consumed by the hot spring. Work began immediately to make David comfortable, but unfortunately he suffered a slow and agonizing death and was pronounced dead the following morning. The celestial pool showed little signs of the horrific tragedy that had occurred there. Its blue waters and gently bubbling surface continued to thrill guests. Until a few days later, when spectators reported a mild eruption, unusual for this particular spring. It was thought that the fat from Moose's body had melted entirely and likely formed a skin on the surface of the pool, heating temperatures beyond their normal searing highs and trapping steam. When the pressure built past a certain level, a pocket of air pushed through the layer of fat to create an impressive but macabre display for onlookers. Since the park's inception in 1872, over 23 deaths have been attributed to the scalding waters in the park.
Human remains found in Yellowstone National Park have now been identified and belong to an LA man.
When we consider the amount of visitors annually to the park, it's fair to say that this is a thankfully rare and unusual thing. There have been a few dog owners who have attempted to save their dogs, some sustaining burns, but none as bad as that of David Kerwin. It's impossible to know whether David was ignorant to the effects the water would have on a human body, or whether this knowledge was overridden by the desperate need to rescue his friend's dog. But in the end, David's tragic death is a reminder of the power of nature and the thin line between bravery and foolishness. Let me know what you thought was going through David's mind just before he jumped in. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay sane.